Hi, everybody. Welcome into Build a Quilt. I'm Diana. I'm so happy to be with you today and so glad that you're joining me for this video, which is our Skill Builder number 3 video. Now, Skill Builder blocks are part of our Quilt Lab Quilters Creative Home. You can find that information over at our website. It is our 12-month advanced membership where you get lots of free patterns, lots of extra tutorials and videos and all that kind of thing. So check that out. And because it is the month of March, it is our Founders Month. And you can see right there in the corner, if you sign up for your 12-month membership and use the coupon code FOUNDER15, you can get 15% off of the fee for your first year. There's 2 ways that you can sign up over there. One is where you pay the subscription price all at once, and one where you split it out over 4 payments. That code can be used on either of those, but check that out, and that's where you will get today's pattern if you wish to be involved. All righty, so today's block is Skill Builder number 3. And I have to say, so many of you have been wanting me to do this. We talked about the special segment that we're talking about in this block a couple of years ago, kind of when Build a Quilt was first rolling. And then I kind of took it away for a while. And so many of you, especially new folks, have been asking for this particular segment. So it makes it perfect to put into one of our skill builder blocks, because skill building is just that, learning how to build our skills within the Build a Quilt quilting system, kind of quilting in general, and then how it works in the Build a Quilt universe. So let me show you this week's block, and if you can see the segment piece that is the special one, type it in the comments below. I'd love to hear. This is the block for this month. Yeah, I actually like to put it like that. There we go. To me, it looks kind of like a flower or a butterfly, maybe. Can you see which of the segment pieces is the special one? We're going to talk about it here now in just a second. That is this block over in the Quilt Lab area. You can download your free pattern set. The Skill Builder pattern sets come with all the digital files and everything. In fact, as we go forward, I'm going to walk you through our patterns and how they work and how they're laid out and how we teach the Build a Quilt system so that you're not confused, because we do have a lot of new folks. But first, I want to talk with you about what block is new. So there's really only 2 segments, and we're going to go over those in a little while. One is the square, the easiest segment of all, just so super simple. But there's a reason we use it, right? It's because when we piece things together, everything matches up. No guessing, no using that 1/4 inch foot to get your perfect seam allowance. Everything comes together. And you'll see, we'll talk about that later in a demo, how that happens. But the block that we're talking about, the segment block that we're talking about, is this one right here, the corner. It's in all 4 of the corners on this block. It's called a modified half square triangle, or I say a modified HST or a MODHST. That's what it is. So let's go under the camera from our overhead, and let's talk about the modified HST. So here we have an HST, or half square triangle, right? It is a square split along the diagonal. One side is one fabric color, one side is another fabric color. This is the first segment piece you learn that helps you basically shape and draw the eye into certain colors and patterns in your quilting life. This little block alone, you can make hundreds of quilts just with that block, depending on the layout and the colors you use. Go into your search engine on your computer, type in half square triangle quilts. You'll be amazed at all the ones that come up for sure. So that is a traditional half square triangle, or we also call it the mama block of all quilting segments, because we use it in almost every single quilt you will ever make. You'll at least make one of these. Sometimes there's a few out there where you don't, but most times there's going to be somewhere in that quilt, there will be a half square triangle. So the modified half square triangle that we're going to work on this month is this one right here. Let me actually, hang on. Yeah, it's this one right here. So what's different about it? Well, in fact, let's bring up our block here because I think you can see it a little bit better. Half of it, one half is one fabric, right? Just like with the half square triangle. But the other half has been split into two pieces or modified. We call this a one-step modification because on this half, we've modified it one time by splitting it into two pieces. That's a MODHST one-step modification, okay? Now, in this particular block, you see where this fabric and this fabric are the same. There was a reason for that in the particular pattern. But the ones we're going to be making today, so it's really clear for you, is half is going to be one fabric and the other half will be two fabrics. And with a standard one-step modification, that's how you see them a lot of the time. So let me show you some others. They're all similar in that these have just two fabrics in them. I'm surprised I did not have a sample that had the three colors, but all three of those are modified HSTs. And because there's only two fabrics in them, look what other shape you're actually making with that, right? Oops, let's turn this one around. There we go. So that modification really can help you make other things. And at the end of the video, stay with me because I have some other blocks to show you with the same single step modification that you're seeing in the block today and how that works in making different shapes. So stay with me. So that's a single step modification. That's what we're making in SkillBuilder 3. Help us get used to and understand what the modified HST is about. In fact, you can see that here. Here we have two modified HSTs put together. If we split them in half, we split this piece in half, there's one. And it's got the 1, 2, 3 colors. And then let me refold this just a little bit. And on this side, again, 1, 2, 3 colors. Look what happens when you put two modified single-stepped HSTs together. That's kind of cool, right? You get kind of maybe a mountain effect. Maybe these end up being the points of a star. Maybe this ends up being some kind of a crazy background in your quilt. The modified HST is truly, without fail, it is my favorite block to use for shaping my fabrics. And that's one of the things that we have talked about in the Skill Builder series so far this year, is the idea of how color and shapes, special shapes, can help you make different, make curves, draw your eye into other colors, make other shapes. In fact, let's look at our modified from last month. This one right here, this Hygge friend heart, this whole piece right here, that's a friendship star. But these lobe segments, two special segments, like our modified HST is a special segment, those lobes help you create that whole star. And here is another one. Now, this one is in the Quilt Lab already. This one was from Quilt Lab last year, but I'm going to be adding this one into the current Quilt Lab Creative Home membership area. So you'll be able to make two Hygge hearts. I love the Hygge hearts. I truly do. In fact, I want to kind of create some more of them so that we can maybe put a bunch of them together because I think they're adorable. But now that's not the only way that you can modify an HST, getting back to that idea. This is another modification. This is a four-way modification. Half of this is still just one piece of fabric, but look at our other half. 1, 2, 3, 4 different fabrics. Now, in this case, It's made with 2 fabrics that have been alternated, but you could use 4 completely different fabrics. You could use 3 fabrics. You could make this a fabric and this a fabric and these 2 the same fabric, or you could make each of these different and these 2 the same. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about how a modified HST can allow you to make all kinds of shapes and patterns within your quilt. And like I said, at the end, we're going to talk about 2 more. So that's this month's block, SkillBuilder Block number 3. And the skill building is all about the modified half square triangle. So let's move on to the rest of the video. And at the end, I'm going to talk to you about those 2 extra blocks. Okay, everybody, are you ready? Let's get started with the Skill Builder number 3 block. Now, the first thing I want to go over with you a little bit is how the pattern flows, how these flow, and how we kind of do our educational model here at Build a Quilt. 1, there is a video like you're seeing now. And then 2, there is your pattern package. They work together. And the pattern package doesn't have a lot of long explanatory written out information in it like you might be used to seeing in other patterns. Because one thing I did was a lot of research on how people want to learn things. Visual learning is like right there at the top. However, not everybody is a visual learner. Some people like to see demonstration type things. That's why we have the video. And kind of right at the bottom is the people that like to read long bits of information. Like myself, actually. I'm kind of I'm a mixture of that visual learner and that person that wants to read and do all the research. So you're not going to see a lot of written in here, but you're going to see a lot of things diagrammed out. So it's really easy to kind of follow along. And I'm going to explain that really quick. So here we have our pattern pack for our Skill Builder 3 block. We have our cover sheet. And you don't have to print these out if you don't want to. And then the very first page is a supply list, right? That's just going to tell you about stabilizer and thread and needles and hoop size and all that kind of information. And that part this is probably the most written out page of our pattern packet. And then the very first thing we show you is a diagram of the block as just solid colors, and then a smaller graphic that shows you the block as you see my sample for it. So just like this, here's our bigger diagram, and right down here in the corner, that's the sample that you saw at the introduction. And then the next thing that we have in our pattern is our all-exclusive coloring sheets. Doesn't like to color, right? But there's really a purpose. There's a method to our madness in creating this coloring sheet, which we created kind of right at the beginning almost of Build a Quilt. And we've gotten more and more people saying that coloring sheet, I love it. We've had a lot of folks saying, hey, that coloring sheet is good for keeping the kids like busy while I'm trying to do some quilting. Why not? Sure, that's a fun thing to do. And then stick those little pictures on your wall. But our coloring sheet is basically the block, but just a line drawing. You can make as many copies as you like. And the nice thing about it, get out your favorite colored pencils, your favorite crayons. Yeah, I still use crayons too. You could even use markers if you want to. But the nice thing about it is it lets you play around with color before you go cutting your fabric. Okay, because what if you think you've picked something that you like and then you start coloring in where it would be on your pattern and you go, oh, that's not going to work. Saved yourself from cutting that fabric and maybe cutting it in a way that it won't be very useful for you in another design. So our coloring sheet is super helpful. And then the very next thing, and that's what we usually start our videos with after the intro, is our fabric and our cutting information. So it tells you what kinds of fabrics you're going to need, how many things you're going to have to cut, and what you're going to have to cut to pre-stage making your segment pieces, right? It tells you how many, what size to cut them. So the sizes you see here are the sizes that you're prepping your fabric so that when you trim it out of your stabilizer later, you'll get your exact finished size. Okay. And I have to say, I'm pretty generous with those amounts. Those of you that have been quilting with Build a Quilt for a long time now, you know that you can probably back off that amount a little bit, especially like if you're running a little close on the fabric that you want to use for the amount. You can probably back off a little bit, but especially for those beginning or those of us who, and I'm one of them, guys, sometimes I just want to be a lazy quilter. I want to do it, but I don't have to want to worry about, like, you know, did I set it exact? And when I flipped it, I missed the edge by, a millimeter. I don't. So I give us plenty of fabric in our pre-cut sizes. I mean, it's not like it's so much over that you're wasting fabric or anything like that, but it gives you plenty. So if you make a boo-boo or if you're new, you're in good shape. Then the next sheet is what we call our segment chart. It shows you what segments you're going to make, how many you're going to make, what colors are involved in those segments, and like in this one, for when we're talking about that modified half square triangle, it tells you, see the how-to demo in the SkillBuilder number 3 block video. So in this video, there's actually going to be demonstrations of our segments for this particular block. Now, I know that if you use one of our basic 6 library sets and you've been working on our 24 block library, which a bunch of these are from there, that's our newest one. If you've been working on those, you know that those patterns don't give you a size, because depending on which library you have, you can choose whatever size you want. But in our SkillBuilder, you're getting all of your digital files in your pattern set. So this one is going to tell you exactly how many to make, what size to cut, all of that good information. And it's going to show you how that piece gets made. Now, sometimes it's a little overkill. You maybe seen the half square made a zillion times. That's okay. It doesn't hurt to refresh your memory, or skip by that part if you want to. But like today with the modified half square triangle, that's going to be new for almost all of you. And so you need that how-to video to make sure. And that's where we use that information instead of a lot of written out information. I just feel like it is really easier for you to follow it that way. And that's the feedback I've gotten from you guys too that have been with us for a while. You like those how-to videos. So we're there for you. And then you're going to get your layout chart. Okay. So what this does is it shows you your segments laid out, how they come together into rows or sections, whatever applies. And then it shows you how everything comes together to form your block, or if we're doing the actual quilt, how the quilt layout comes together, all of that. And they're all in the colors that I've used in my samples. So if you're following along, if you're using the same fabrics, great. If you're not following along with the same fabrics, but you've chosen different colors, it's a great idea to have your coloring sheet around or your fabrics around with letters on them so that you know which ones go in which space, okay? Because you're always, always welcome to change your fabrics and colors. And then the next sheet is just a blow-up diagram of the actual block in the fabrics that I've used so that you can see that a little bit more expanded. And then the other sheet that's the only one that's really got a lot of writing on it is this one that tells you thank you if you have concerns, how to contact us, if you have questions. Thank you for supporting us. We're glad you're part of our community. All of that kind of information and kind of the do's and don'ts with the pattern. Like, you can't go out and teach this pattern without written permission from me. You can't sell the pattern on your website. Stuff like, you know all that stuff, right? So that's at the end. And that's how our pattern sets run, okay? So now that we've got that done, I'm going to set that aside. And the next thing I want to do before we talk about fabrics and segments, I want to show you how to cut a segment out of the stabilizer. So I have one of our modified half square triangles here. Now, because this is a new segment for most of you, you could get 2 of these in a 5x7 hoop and get 2 per hooping of this size segment that we're making today. But I'm going to highly recommend that you're going to be making 4 of these. I'm going to highly recommend that you make all 4 of them as a single hooping. Yes, you're going to be using 4 pieces of stabilizer. It's not going to end up being that big of a deal long run for your stabilizer quantity. But I'm having you do that because that's what helps you get used to making this type of segment. If it were a square, those are so simple, right? Slap a couple of them in there and you're done. Good to go. But when you're making something that is not harder, just a little more complicated because it has more fabric sections in it with Build a Quilt, then I want you to make like your first 3 or 4 of them by themselves in a hooping. That way you've got space to see it. You're not trying to work around something because you've got one up here and one down here on your hoop. You've got everything in a really easy layout for you to see and to try. And if you make a little mistake, you can take it out. You can take your hoop out, take it out, redo it if you need to, right? But I think that's best. And then so I kept one of them and made one so that we can show you how to cut it out of the stabilizer. Now I've shown this in the how-to videos and all of that for our single segments on the Basic 6 libraries, but I want to show you this, and I just actually yesterday posted a really short video of this demonstration because I've been getting some questions from people about they're having a really hard time seeing their thread. And that's because if you're using the Wonderfill Deco Bob 80 weight pearl gray thread, because it is a lighter thread in weight and a lighter thread in color value, it can be hard to see on because it blends and sinks in with your fabric so well. That's why I chose it. One of the reasons I chose it. And so it can be harder to see. But if you just flip your piece over and use the outline on the back of the stabilizer as your guide for cutting out, you'll be able to see that line much better. So let me go ahead and flip over to our overhead camera. Here we go. So I'm going to hold this up. See those lines around there? You see them much easier. And there's kind of a reason for that. When we're making our block, we end up going around this section once when we start on the stabilizer. And at the end, we go all the way around again to hook all of our little pieces of fabric together and to give us that stitch line that we need, that nice, good stitch line for when we stitch our pieces together. Okay, so it's much easier to see because it really looks a little thicker on the back. And because the color is coming up through the stabilizer, the color is a little bit lighter so it doesn't block out your pieces so much. So here, I'm going to put on my little craft magnifiers, and I've got my ruler here, my 1/4 inch line. I'm going to place that right on my stitch line, that 1/4 inch line, right on my stitch line. And I'm going to take my 45 millimeter pinking blade rotary cutter. And why that? Because every time you cut this and you get those little dips, that's less that is going to end up in your seam allowance. So all those little dips, that's fabric being taken out of your seam allowance so that it will lay flatter and press better for you. Now I'm just going to turn it. So I just keep turning it 90 degrees all the way around the square and cutting it out. And so this can go really quickly once you've done it a couple of times. And like I've told you before, guys, if you're new, give yourself a break, right? Give yourself a little bit of grace. Take a little bit of time to learn this. Don't get frustrated right off the bat if things don't go well, because nothing goes well for everyone perfectly the first time. In fact, I dare say nothing ever goes truly perfect in the long run, right? So we all have to learn and take a little time. So, but there we go. There's our block easily cut out. And I was easily able to see that line as I was cutting so I could line up my 1/4 inch mark on it. Let's go back up to our regular camera now. So there we have our modified half square triangle or our MODHST all cut out. And that's how you cut out any segment, whether it's a square, a triangle, a rectangle, you're going to cut it out just like I just showed you. Okay. All right. So let's talk about color. Then we'll talk about segments, color and fabric. So I want to get my package with my pattern information. And if you've colored your coloring sheet and you're choosing different colors, then you want to mark them on here based on what we're going to talk about right now. So first, let me just tell you, I chose these 3 fabrics. Let me show you in the overhead. It'll be easier for you. I chose these 3 fabrics. This is my fabric A, this is my fabric B, and this is my fabric C. And that's what you need for this project. 3 fabrics. What I would do if you're not, now I intentionally chose some really bright, beautiful colors. I'm ready for spring. I'm getting ready to plant in the flower farm. I really am ready for those beautiful colors. So I chose some really bold colors. I chose a MODHST grunge in turquoise. This is from the Tulip Pink Curiouser and Curiouser line. It's called Baby Bud, I believe, with the pink backing. A very bright pink, but see those beautiful flowers in there? And all those little hearts in there are exactly that color. And then this is a MODHST light orange background with a white Swiss dot. So any fabric kind of like that if you want to do it. This was actually from a MODHST line and I cannot find the name of it any longer, but I know that there are fabrics like this out there. So if you wanted to use them, Basic Gray by MODHST Grunge, or Basic Gray Grunge by MODHST in the turquoise color. So you want turquoise. And the nice thing about this turquoise, it's got shades of green in it that are just the shades in the tula, in the leaves, in the tulas, little rosebuds there. And then this is from the Curiouser and Curiouser line by Tulip Pink, and it is Baby Bud with the pink background. Now, Baby Bud also comes with a cream background. I think it might come with a black background as well, if I'm remembering that collection. But I'm pretty sure you should be able to find this out there. I know it's not like the line isn't out there a lot, but I bet like through Etsy or something, you could find a fat quarter of this pretty easily. And then this was from, I know it's a MODHST fabric, and the collection was actually for fall when the collection, and I don't have any more that has like the name and stuff on it. I apologize, but it's a MODHST light orange with a white Swiss dot. If you type that in, you'll find it. That's how I was able to find it on the website, to know that it's kind of out there. But any light orange with a white Swiss dot on it, or a teeny tiny dot, or you could even do a bigger dot, I guess, if you wanted, but that small dot looks great. That's what you would need if you're going to use those 3 particular fabrics. Okay, so now your pattern package tells you under the cut and fabric sheet, it tells you just what we went through. You need 3 fabrics, A, B, and C. Now, we're going to call fabric A, which is my Basic Gray Grunge turquoise. We're going to call that fabric A. If you're not going to use these fabrics, this should be your darkest fabric, okay? So if you're using your coloring sheet, in these corners where we're going to be using that fabric, write in dark, or write in an A and then next to it dark, and then you'll know. Or write on your coloring or your chart here under fabric A, just right along there, dark, okay? That way you'll know which fabric you've chosen goes where in your particular block, okay? Then fabric B was our Tulip Pink, our pretty little Tulip Pink Baby Bud. I love this one so much. It's so pretty. I am a nut for tiny baby rosebuds. When I was a very little girl, I had a pillow that was covered in tiny yellow baby rosebuds, and I have loved them ever since. I mean, you couldn't get that pillow away from me, and the only reason was because of those rosebuds. It was just an old nasty pillow, I think, but I love the cover on it so much. So the Baby Buds by Tula from Curiouser and Curiouser. That's color B. So on here or on your coloring sheet, color B, right in here, medium. That should be a medium color for you, okay? We've made this kind of simple in the respect of color value, dark, medium, light, dark, and light, medium, and dark. So then you just heard me. This third one in that light orange with the polka dot is color C. Yeah, is color C. So right across that little piece right there, write the word light so that when you're picking out your colors, you know which ones you're going to need, okay? You're going to need a light, you're going to need a dark, and you're going to need a medium, light, medium, and dark. So you can see on our photo right here, light, medium, and dark. Dark is going to go in the middle. The mediums are going to be in our cardinal coordinates and so forth. And we'll talk about that more during our layout portion because there's something special about the segments. And when we start talking about the segments here in a little bit, I will share that with you. But that is your color. Your pattern's going to tell you how many to cut. And what I want you to know is that in this pattern, the next step is our segment chart. And normally when we make things that's kind of pretty simple, each one of one certain type of segment is made the same way always. That's not the case this time. This time, we are making the modified HST in pairs. We're making two of them with, so the way I'm showing it to you is the blue is here, the B fabric is here in the C. So A, B, C, counterclockwise, right? A, B, C. You're going to make two of them like that. It tells you right on here. So read this part. It's very important because it can mess you up if you don't read it. Then the second pair of the four that you're making is going to go A, C, B. So A is always in the same place, but in the second pair, B and C get flipped, guys. So really easy to do. The information is there for you, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that. And the reason that happens is how our block is going to come together. It needs to be that so that it will fall, all the pieces, fabric pieces will fall into the right spot. Okay, so in this block, we are using two segment pieces. We're making a square, super simple. There's a how-to video even for that, because all of you that are new, especially those of you new to Quilt Lab that have jumped into Quilt Lab without ever doing Build a Quilt, that's fantastic. And I want to make sure that you have that information. And then the modified HST is the other segment. So there's only two segments, but the modified HST, please remember, two of them that get made A, B, C, and two of them get made A, C, B. Now, I will tell you, when you make these, you make them starting on the modified side. And then your A piece is the last piece you put down. You'll see that in the how-to video. So I should be showing them to you this way. In the pattern, you look at them like this. This is the outside corner. But when you make them, you always make your modified section first. Okay, so those are the only two segments, types of segments that we're going to be making in this particular block. So let me lay my fabrics over here and let me put my tools away, because now we're going to talk about the layout. And when you get to the layout, I really suggest that you either pull out this picture diagram or the diagram that is at the beginning that shows you the flat colors and the small version, or pick out your coloring sheet if it's going to help you for color verification. So I am going to lay this out here. And I'm even looking at my pictures. I'm going to lay out my rows and then I'm going to show them to you and we'll walk through them. And this is a simple 9 patch, so it's just 3 rows and 3 segments in each row. There we go. Okay, so here we go. I've got it laid out. Now I'm going to flip the camera over. Here we go. All righty. Here is our layout. Now, the one thing you want to know is, how do you know where to put these modified HSTs? Well, follow your diagram. That's going to show you, as long as this looks like that, you got it. So the other hint I can give you is your bee fabric. So in this case, the baby bud from Tula, the Tula fabric, the bee fabric will always touch the bee fabric on the sides of it, okay? So we have our cardinal pieces here, our cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. You're always going to have one. So if I flipped these so that my blue corner faced outwards, that would not be correct, right? That's not going to work out right. So I need to flip them. So on these outer sides, your bee fabric needs to touch the bee fabric in the center. On the top and the bottom, that makes your C side touch your bee side. So what you want to look for is your outer rows. Is my bee fabric touching my bee fabric, touching my bee fabric? And then follow your layout. And that will show you exactly, just in case it gets confusing for you. It'll show you right on the layout, okay? So you don't have to worry about remembering that. I just wanted to give you that little tip, but you don't have to worry about that. It's right in the layout. So this is the first thing you see in the layout, all 9 blocks laid out just like this. Then the next part of the layout shows you 3 rows, and those 3 rows come together when you take the 2 outer pieces and stitch them together with the center piece to make the 3 rows, okay? Now, how do you stitch them together? You don't use a 1/4 inch foot. That's right. Build a Quilt does not use a 1/4 inch foot. You're going to use this line on the back as your stitching guide. There is a how-to video segment. You're going to see the square segment, the modified HST segment, and then you're going to see the stitch things together segment, okay? And that's coming up. And so you're going to stitch those together and create your 3 rows. And then the last part of your layout is going to show you the full block. And that is how it comes together. Now, I think that looks like a flower opening up. And I also think it looks like a butterfly. So you can consider that either way you want to, okay? All righty. So the next part of the video, as I said, is the how-to pieces. And then we'll come back at the end and we'll wrap things up. And I have 2 other pieces to show you for this block. All right, let's move ahead to the how-to video sections. Okay, so here we are at the machine and we're going to be doing the square. Now, you're going to say, I know, why would we just stitch one piece down on the stabilizer when we could just cut it and sew it? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Part of the technique of piecing in the hoop is to give quilters who have never quilted and pieced before some guidelines to help them with final sewing, and to give all of us the ability to sew our quilt together without having to have a 1/4 inch foot on our sewing machine, without having to worry about accuracy when we're doing that, but even though we're not worrying about accuracy because all of our seam lines and things are built in, it's actually helping us to be
more consistent. And consistency in our quilting is what makes our quilts really so beautiful. You know, I like to say about quilting, you can do anything you want in quilting, and don't let someone scream at you if you have like one little point that isn't exact. Perfect is the killer of joy in quilting, I think. I don't recommend you ever trying to be perfect. But what this does is helps you to be consistent so that you get everything just as it should be, and your project will come together nicely. But you won't have to worry about, oh, is my quarter inch a good quarter inch, a scant quarter inch? I've been quilting for over 50 years, and this really is going to help you with all that consistency without having to worry about it. And it gives you another thing as well. It gives you a final box so that you have that stitch guide when you go to stitch your squares together. So I'll show you more of that when we do our trimming. So here we are, we're all set up for our stitch out again. Now the square really only has two pieces. We're going to do our border just like we've done before. I've done everything on this wash away stabilizer, and I will admit this one is by far the easiest and fastest. In fact, according to my machine here, at 700 stitches a minute, this is all stitched out in a minute or less, so pretty quick. Now let's speak about speed for a little bit. I always recommend that you don't piece above 700 stitches per minute. You can do your embroidery that way and all, but quilting is not about speed. And whenever we go and start to worry about speed, high speeds, that's when we end up with more mistakes, even in this process. So I say don't go above 700 stitches a minute on your machine speed. If your machine doesn't even go that high, good. That's good. Usually I do 600 to 700 stitches a minute on my machine. I put my little bit of glue there. Now I'm going to lay my square of fabric down, and I can kind of feel where my border is. Okay, it's not exactly even on all sides, but it doesn't matter. I have plenty of fabric there for trimming. Now, my second and my last piece, because I don't really have to do that basting or that stitched out border again, because it's really doing it for me now. I am just going to stitch this down. This is my final stitch step for doing my square. So now all of my squares are going to be exactly the same size. That's the consistency thing, not only with your seams, but when you cut. A lot of times, oh, we think we cut everything right. And if you've been a quilter in more traditional ways, you know what I mean when I say squaring up a square. You never have to square up when you piece in the hoop. It's really nice not to have to do that. So this one is done just like that. So our square is finished. Now we're going to go over under my other camera, and we're going to talk about trimming these out, and then we'll be ready for our last little bit of our talk here on our how-to video for Build a Quilt in the Hoop Block Basics Set 1.
Okay, everybody, here we are at the machine, and the segment you're looking at is a modified half square triangle. In fact, this modified half square triangle is a single stepped modified half square triangle, meaning that half of it is just a single piece of fabric like all HSTs are, but the other half has been modified one time. Instead of being one piece of fabric, it's now two. Sometimes you can see modified half square triangles, and they are a two-step modification, meaning that this would end up being 3 pieces, and a 3-step would be 4 pieces. And I don't think I've ever seen one half split into more than 4 pieces. So that is a single-stepped modification of a half square triangle. Sometimes you might also see a double-sided modified half square triangle, and that's when both sides
have been modified a little bit. They're more rare. You could almost say a quarter square triangle is a two-sided modification, but typically two-sided modifications has 3 modifications on one side and 2 on the other. Like I said, they're a little rarer. But this is the block that we're going to make in this demonstration. So I have my stabilizer here, and I'm using a black thread so that you can see it more easily. Normally, I would use Wonderfil's Deco Bob 80 weight. It's the perfect piecing thread in a light pearl gray for any piecing, whether you're piecing with your embroidery machine, piecing with your sewing machine, or piecing by hand. It's the best thread that I've ever used for patchwork quilting and piecing. So I've gone ahead and done step 1 right on the stabilizer. That's pretty much what you do every time you start a build a quilt segment. Is the first step is always right on the stabilizer. It gives you basically the boundary. So sometimes you'll hear me refer to it as the boundary box. Now, I'm also going to do the second step on the stabilizer as well, and that is going to show me where I'm going to place my first piece of fabric. Okay, so now I know I need a triangle right there, and if we look back at our sample, we'll see that it's going to be that piece of fabric right there. As with all build and quilt segments and projects, when you're making them, the very first piece is always placed right side up. In this particular segment square, we have 3 pieces. We have the larger triangle, which is for this side of our modified half square triangle, and this triangle, which is the same size as this one, which will make this piece here. And your instructions will tell you how to cut all of that to get those pieces ready. Now, when I lay this down right side up, I see that I have my seam there, and I can feel it with my fingers. And I just want to make sure that I have a little bit, 1/4 inch, even slightly less, that's fine. That I can feel it with my fingers. Now, a lot of times I will tell you start this with your lightest fabric so you don't get any ghosting when you flip, but sometimes a pattern will call for you to use a darker fabric first, and if it does, then do that because there is a reason for that. So we're just going to try this. These are both of a relatively similar value, although they're different colors, so we're fine here. Okay, now when we're dealing with triangles in this fashion, it's often really easy to think, okay, so this is going to be here like this, so I just fold this piece over like this. Trust me, if you do anything other than what I'm going to tell you, you're going to end up not having enough fabric. So your second piece of fabric, you always, in this type of a situation, lay it down directly on top of the previous triangle, right sides together. No changing, no making it like this because that looked like maybe it would flip into place. Make sure it just lays on top of there, just snug as you please. Now we're going to stitch that down. You can give it a little hold if you want to, if you're a little nervous about it sliding around. Now in this next step, you can do a couple of things. You can take your fabric glue stick and put a little bit of glue right there, or what I do a lot of times is I just flip my fabric over. See how that flipped right into the space as perfectly as it's supposed to? That's because of how I laid that on top of that piece of fabric. All I'm going to do now is hold this over here on this corner to kind of hold it down. I'm giving a little finger press there, and we're just going to now let our machine stitch it into place. Really easy. Great. Now we're at our third piece of fabric, and with this piece, this is a motor grunge, and you can see this side looks different than this side. So this is our back side, this is our front side. So just like before, let me slide this out. We're going to now lay this piece right sides together, right on top of our first half, just like we would be making a regular half square triangle. Push that back in, and now we'll stitch that down. Now we're going to take that blue piece of fabric and we're going to flip it over. We're going to give this a good finger press. Again, you can use a bit of fabric glue stick right there if you want to hold this down. Give it a good press. I just typically hold them in the corners and that will hold it down. You don't have to pull it tight, just hold it in place. Your machine's going to do all the work for you. Perfect. Now we have one more step of stitching to do, and that is basically we're going to stitch our boundary box again. But that boundary box this time does a few things for us. One, anywhere where our fabrics come together, it's going to stitch them all together now as one piece. Also, it is going to become on the back side, it is going to be our stitching line for when we stitch our segments together. And what I want you to do now is have two pieces of fabric tape or paper tape, whatever you use, something that is low tack or made specifically for fabric. Low tack means less chemical, so it's not going to harm your fabric. And we're going to lay it here and here because our foot is going to come like this. And as it does, right here, that's right where your foot could get caught and do something like that. We don't want that. So we're going to place our tape there. We always place our tape outside our stitch line. Remember, these are just straight stitches, just like we would do with our sewing machine. And straight stitches are the easiest stitch to rip out. We don't want that to happen. So we're going to place our tape out here. It also allows us to reuse our tape several times. But even though our tape is there, don't walk away. I did that just the other day and ended up having to redo my whole piece because I used an older piece of tape that didn't have sticky left on it. I didn't check that. So here we're going to do our final box around, which is going to give us our stitch line. Sorry, my machine. I think I'm going to have to take my machine in to get serviced. It keeps wanting to stop and start on me. I thought I had figured the problem out, but it doesn't look like I have. Okay, now all of my pieces of fabric have been stitched together with that final stitch around the square. Just move this out a little bit. We're going to take our tape off, and because it's still sticky and it doesn't have any junk on it, I'm just going to save those and use them again next time. Now, with a modified half square triangle, whether it is just this single step modification or a double, whatever, I want you to make your first 3 or 4 of them in your 5x7 hoop as a single piece in your hoop until you get used to the idea of making this part. Everything up until now, we've only dealt with a few pieces. Everything has been very simple, and this is simple as well, but you need to get used to making this half, how you lay that fabric down. You can technically, if you're doing a 3x3 or smaller piece, you could get 2 to 3 of them in a 5x7 hooping, and normally I would have done that. But I want you to make your first 3 or 4 as a single hooping until you get used to making this idea. Give yourself that time to do it. Your first one might turn out perfect, and then the second time you make it, maybe you forgot a step and it didn't turn out great. So just give yourself some grace there. Allow yourself that time to learn. After you've done them 3 or 4 times, then go ahead and put a couple in a hooping at a time for your project. But there we have our single-stepped modified half square triangle. Let's go ahead and move on now. Hi everybody, so this is Diana and I'm here at my sewing machine to show you how to sew your pieces together without getting that stitch line to show. Now you can see here I just have two little half square triangles. I've used the pin method up here at the point to make sure they're lined up, and I just have one clip here. Now what I do first is when I put this in my machine, I get my needle right to where the line would be, right on that stitch line, okay? Then I come over to my machine's tools and I take my width down by 1, and that's all. Now I'm going to put it back up, and I'm going to take you back over to here and let you see that. Okay, so watch the needle, how that moves. I'm going to move it now. See how it just moved one place to the inside, or I guess as you're looking at it, it would be to the left. That would be to the inside. Now I'm going to place my needle down, and I can go ahead and remove my clip because this is a small piece, and I can sew right down. And I have my stitch length at 1.8, and you can see now that I've already done a few stitches, it is still right one click in. It's not directly on top of it, and so I should, when I'm done, be able to finish and not have that black line sewn, and you just follow it all the way down. Now I'm going to cut my thread and bring it out, and I will open this up and bring it right back over so you can see it. So there it is, opened up. Now you might see a little of the black in this case because I used that marker, but when I'm just going to open up my seam in the back and hold it open for you. But you can see when I hold it open, that's just a little piece of thread that I can pull out of there. That's there. That's gone. And now you don't see it at all. You don't see any of the black thread, which I used for demonstration purposes, but you don't see any of my original embroidery thread from making the patchwork itself. And that is just by moving that needle one space and one space only. And again, I always stitch these with a 1.8 or a 2.0 stitch length so that it really holds these together when you go and open them up. And when I open it up here, you can see the line all the way down on both sides, and that's what you should be able to do. So I hope that you found that helpful. That was a great question. Thank you so much for asking that. And now we'll move on with the rest of the Q&A for today.
Okay, everybody. So how was that? How did that go for you? It's pretty simple block to make. Did you make your 4 HSTs, modified HSTs in a single hoop, each one in a single looping? Do you have that rhythm now on how those blocks go together? If you ever have a pattern where you're going to make another type of modification, like a 3 or a 4 piece modification, those will go together the same way. You always start out doing the modified side first, and then at the very end you have just the one piece to flip over. But as long as you follow the steps on your embroidery machine, making that modification should not be any problem for you. And now that you've made them, you should be a pro with them in no time. So I promised you 2 blocks that use the same modification that we made today, the single step modification. Let's look at this one. This is a beautiful 8-pointed star, right? Not difficult. We've all seen 8-pointed stars. They're one of the reasons they come in so many different configurations and so many different layouts is because of how the segments are arranged and the color is put into them. Now, this centerpiece here could be a diamond and a square, but it's not. It is 4 half square triangles. That's all that is. But here, what is making our star points and our background, believe it or not, it's our single step modification. Split it right in half. It's kind of like this one that I showed you, right? Right in half. And so now this one is a little different. The A fabric is the lightest, and then B and C, or A, B, C on this one, and then A, B, C on that one. So but it is just that single step modification. And by making 8 of them and putting them together, that gave you your 8 star points. And look at how lovely it turned out. Part of this star towards the very center, we have that darkish purple, and here we have that lovely gold and silver, that deep, kind of actually a bronzy gold and silver. And then here we have the lighter color, kind of. And then as it shoots out into those star points, we get those deep, beautiful purples again. And then it is on a really light background fabric, but not a solid. It's a white that has kind of a gray print on it, a light gray print. But didn't that turn out pretty? And that is because that star was made with a single step modification HST, just like the ones we did today. Now let's look at this down here. This block, I'm sorry it's a little wrinkly. It's been in storage. When I pulled it out, I didn't have time to press it again. But this block is another 8-pointed star. It looks complete. Wait. Yeah, that's right. They're both 8-pointed stars. That's what I'm telling you. 8-pointed stars can look completely different. They're all 8-pointed stars, but they look different because of what segments we use, how they're laid out, and how we lay out the color. So this one, now here's the surprise for you guys. We don't have a true project for this one because this block was supposed to be last month in February. And because of the announcements and Quilt Lab and all of that, it got shoved to March. So again, thank you all for your patience on that. So there's not a technical project for this one, but there is another block you can make, and that's this one. With the 2 pieces, the square and the modified HST that you have in this month's block, both of those blocks are made with the exact same pieces. They're just moved around a little differently, right? That's all that is placing them and doing them differently. So you can make this. You'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares of one color. So any color you want, any fabric you want. I would make it a light for a background. If you do it dark, make your star lighter in color and vice versa. And then you're going to make 4 of your modified HSTs. And the way you place them, so on this month's block, we placed them where our large triangle became our outer corners, right? And that shape, that gave us this shape here. In this one, because the modified HST is now going to be in your cardinal coordinate positions, north, south, east, and west, you're going to put these where the top one, your triangle, is going to be towards the bottom. And on this one, your large triangle is going to be towards the upper top left. This one, the upper top right, and this one, the lower bottom left. So lower bottom right, upper top left, upper top right, lower bottom left. And that will make that. So if you want, right now, snap a picture of that block. If I will make a chart of this one for you so you can see placement. I'll make a quick layout chart and I'll put it over in Quilt Lab for you. It won't come out until tomorrow though, okay? Because I don't have it, but so that you have something, because I know sometimes you have to have that layout piece. That's fine. But with these pieces, you'll be able to make that block. In fact, that block was part of our quilt along in 24, I think. It was part of our overall quilt, and it's a beautiful block. I love it. And see, just by flipping around your modified HSTs, it really is giving you, it's really giving you a friendship star within a friendship star. It's really a beautiful block. And so is this one. I love this one. And yeah, I did go wild with the colors. All right, everybody. That is SkillBuilder Block number 3. If you want to have more information, if you want to join us and find out what Quilt Lab, a Quilter's Creative Home membership is all about, check out our website there, mybuildaquilt.com. And it will tell you on the first page, there's a link to a video, or the actual videos there. Watch it so you find out what's going on, what Quilt Lab is all about. We'd love to have you join us. And don't forget that because it's the month of March through March 31st, if you choose to purchase a membership and use the code at checkout, Founder15, you will be included in the Quilt Lab Quilters Home founding membership group, and you'll get a special little badge that you can use in all of your texts and your emails and all that kind of stuff. So that's all over at our website. If you have any questions, please contact me at support@sewuncommon.com, and I'll get back with you as soon as I possibly can, typically right away, unless I'm sleeping. That's always the rule for everything. I try to get back right away unless I'm sleeping. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me today for SkillBuilder Block number 003. Until next time, everybody, what are quilters? We're artists. See how beautiful we make the world? Isn't that great? And every time we put a quilt out into the world, the home, the person, whoever, it makes it a more beautiful place. It brings beauty into the life of someone. Quilters are kind of incredible that way, I think. So until next time, everybody, go out and quilt life beautiful, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.